So right now, as we're waiting to find out exactly what's going to be in the reconciliation infrastructure bill, we have natural disasters hitting multiple different parts of the United States, fires in the West, tropical storms and massive flooding in the South and the Northeast. And so when you combine both of those things, what do you get? You might think an opportunity to finally take climate change seriously and understand its connection to infrastructure. But no, what you get is Joe Manchin, who I guess has been lonely as the news has been focusing on these disasters and on Afghanistan, and now he wants some attention. And so this Wednesday, he was at an event hosted by the US Chamber of Commerce, and he said, let's sit back, let's see what happens. We have so much on our plate. And I wish he was talking about food, but no, he's talking about the reconciliation bill. Because earlier today, he released an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying a pause is warranted because it will provide more clarity on the trajectory of the pandemic, and it will allow us to determine whether inflation is transitory or not. While some have suggested this reconciliation legislation must be passed now, I believe that making budgetary decisions under artificial political deadlines never leads to good policy or sound decisions. I have always said if I can't explain it, I can't vote for it, and I can't explain why my Democratic colleagues are rushing to spend $3.5 trillion. And so he says for now, thanks to inflation and debt and blah, 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 he can't support the thing that he's already supported, and indeed, months and months ago called for even more spending, saying there should be $4 trillion in infrastructure. But now, as dozens of people just died of flooding in New York and New Jersey, he thinks it's time for a pause.
Okay, so one of the blah, blah, blahs, John, was Afghanistan. He's like, oh, COVID, and there's another reason I can't do it is Afghanistan. Wait, what does that have to do with infrastructure in America? In fact, if it has anything to do with it, you would think, well, we're out of Afghanistan, good, we can save a lot of money and spend that over here. Instead of trying to do nation building in Afghanistan, we could do nation building here in America. And he's like, no, that's why we shouldn't do it here.
Yep.
They're not even trying to make sense. They're just throwing stuff up against the wall. Then he says, these artificial deadlines, they don't make any sense. I'm not gonna operate under artificial deadlines. At the same time, he is pressuring Biden administration, Schumer and Pelosi, and saying, you have to pass my infrastructure bill that I did with the Republicans, and you've got to pass it right now. I can't wait, I can't wait. I don't want to do the $3.5 trillion one at the same time. It's gonna take too long. You have to pass mine. You have to get my artificial deadline in. I'm not kidding, guys.
Yep.
That's actually his position. It's not even hyperbole. So these guys lie for a living, and like over the top, easily provable lies within the same paragraph, right? And so why do they do it when it's so brazen? Because they don't watch online videos, they don't go on the internet, they only get their news from mainstream media. And unfortunately, a lot of their voters get it from mainstream media. And they know mainstream media is never going to point out that a politician is a liar. They love Joe Manchin. I mean, they've made him a hero. They're like, what is Joe Manchin going to say? Joe Manchin, oh, you represent all the moderates in America. These radical left, and by the way, radical right, the mainstream media will say. But Joe Manchin, who got out of a Chamber of Commerce event where he was literally taking legalized bribes.
Yep.
Chamber of Commerce is the main business group in America, but lobbying group for business. And they give checks to politicians, which we don't call bribes anymore. We call them campaign contributions. And the press never says it. Never says, hey, this guy just took a whole bunch of bribes and now he's coming in here with this horse crap. They say, oh, the moderate Joe Manchin is making brilliant points here about how the progressives are rushing things through. That's why we have to rush through the moderate version instead. So the press is who's screwing you. Yeah. Manchin's just a tool.
I just want to ask Joe Manchin, when did deficit hawking, come back in vogue? Like that hasn't been a thing since before I was born. People don't care about the deficit and debt. What are you talking about? I also think it's deeply embarrassing for him as a sitting United States senator to put out a statement saying he doesn't understand the infrastructure bill. That's your job. You should be able to understand it and you should be able to explain it. And maybe if you spend a little less time sitting down with the executives over at Exxon and a little more time paying attention to your actual job and the wants and needs of your constituents, the people who actually are able to vote for you and not just the people who are funneling millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars into your campaign, then maybe you would actually know what's going on. Maybe you should just sit down, shut up, and listen a little bit, Joe Manchin.
I think that would be a great start. Well, we're obviously frustrated with him, and we're pointing out the influence of money on all of this. Well, some of his Democratic colleagues are as well. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, Manchin has weekly huddles with Exxon and is one of many senators who gives lobbyists their pen to write so-called bipartisan fossil fuel bills. It's killing people, our people, at least 12 last night, sick of this bipartisan corruption that masquerades as clear-eyed moderation. So that's pretty strong. She calls out the specific lobbyists he talks to, says that he's just giving over his power to them, and then basically blames him for the death of her constituents. So that's in the House. Bernie Sanders responded to Manchin saying, rebuilding our crumbling physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems is important. Rebuilding our crumbling human infrastructure, healthcare, education, climate change is more important. No infrastructure bill without the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which AOC also said, you want to destroy one side, we're perfectly happy to destroy the other. And there's been others as well. Pramila Jayapal and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar had great commentary too. But thankfully they're not backing down from Manchin and his threats. Yeah. But I have a question for you. What do you think his goal is out of this? What is he trying to achieve? Complete destruction of it? A paring back of it? More pork for West Virginia out of it? What do you think?
Oh, I know exactly what he's trying to do. So number one, he did this after the COVID relief bill, right after he killed minimum wage. He went to National Restaurant Association and so did Cinema, and they collected bribes. And so then the question isn't why is Manchin acting like this? The question is, why does the Chamber of Commerce want to kill the $3.5 trillion bill and pass the bipartisan bill? Because the bipartisan bill is structured to give away as much money as possible to private corporations. So that is a huge urgent matter for them that requires an artificial deadline. The other one lowers Medicare age. Well, that hurts the pharmaceutical companies, the health insurance companies most of all. So I can go down the list of the different things where companies are not in favor of the $3.5 trillion one. And they go, and that money's reserved for our tax cuts. So don't you dare give it to average Americans. So Manchin is just an order taker. They're like, here, boy, come here. Take your orders now and take your checks. Now you go do as you're told. And then he goes, he's not even that bright. That's why he'll say things that are an obvious contradiction in the same paragraph. Because he's not paid to be smart or a leader. He's paid to just do as he's told. And that describes almost all the politicians. And by the way, you guys all know that. No matter where you are in the political spectrum, if you're watching this, you know what I'm saying about that is true. And you would apply to Democrats, Republicans, etc. The only people who don't know that is the mainstream media. They're like, oh, Manchin's like they would be literally, every reporter in Washington would be nuclear level outraged at what I'm saying now. They're like, he besmirched the reputation of Joe Manchin. And they would attack me and not Manchin. So that's how awful our press is. And but look, I don't want to gloss over how important the statements of the progressives, including AOC, were. I mean, AOC pointed out that Manchin, a fellow Democrat, actually cares about lobbyists more than the voters. Mentioned ExxonMobil, how he's taking orders from them. That is unprecedented. Hasn't happened in decades in Washington. And the Democratic leadership had been pressuring progressives from the minute that AOC and the others won. Don't you ever, that's their golden rule. Never, ever criticize a fellow Democrat. And they're breaking the golden rule, and that is incredibly courageous and can lead to change. She even used the word corruption, unprecedented, okay? And of course the dummies in the alt left are like, no, it's all their fault. All they're doing is tweeting. No, you schmucks. They're saying we're gonna withhold our vote. That's what Bernie's saying. That's what AOC is saying. When they're not doing the right thing, you critique. When they are doing the right thing, you go, great, we're happy about that. You don't go, I'm gonna come to your house and endanger your life, because you don't understand politics. So this is Jamal Bowman, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, who I have critiqued several times before, doing the right thing and saying, no, you're not getting our vote. You're not getting our vote on that bipartisan bill until you do the $3.5 trillion bill. That's progressives fighting back, and that's awesome and should be celebrated.
Cenk, I think what you failed to consider though is that every time some Twitter account that was made last month tweets hashtag fraud squad, that actually gets us a lot closer to the infrastructure deal than people in Congress actually getting us the infrastructure deal.
Yes.
But I mean, jokes aside, I'm really happy to see the progressive levying their power here, the power that they have as far as this vote goes. But what really sort of gets me down is that they're not, coming from the same position as the blue dog Dems, as the Joe Manchin conservative Democrats withholding their vote. Because at the end of the day, the Joe Manchins, if nothing happens, if there's no infrastructure deal, even the bipartisan one, there's no skin off their back. Like it's okay. But the progressives want something, they want to see something pass. At the end of the day, they do want to see a change because we need, this money for infrastructure. We need the spending. We need these repairs, and they actually give a crap about their constituents. They care about, helping the American people in a way that the Joe Manchins don't. So they're not arguing from, the same position of strength, which sucks. But it is good to see them levying the power that they do have and standing up to them. Particularly Joe Manchin.
Yeah, and by the way, I call them alt-left, the fraud squad clowns and stuff. I started blocking them, and every time I block, I go to check their timeline. About 70% of them follow and retweet alt-right guys. They actually are alt-right. They're pretending to be left-wing to try to rip us apart. So understand those clowns. Anyway, they're totally irrelevant at this point. So we'll stop talking about them very, very soon. They're just stupid and loud. All right, last thing is Joe Manchin saying, I can't even explain what's in this bill. Ties go in, ties go out. You can't explain that. You're a United States Senator. Isn't it your job to know what's in the bill?
It's embarrassing.
I mean, and he says that in the media. It's like, oh, bravo, bravo. Joe Manchin doesn't understand the bill. He's such a wonderful moderate. Everybody should do what Joe Manchin says. He's a moderate. He's so great. He's the reasonable one. The schmuck just told you he doesn't even know what the hell's in it. He didn't bother looking.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it reminds me of Nancy Pelosi with her green dream or whatever. It's like they delight in their own feigned ignorance about these things. Because there's no harm to it. They don't like if they don't know what's going on and these things that so many people support that are finally getting representation in Congress. There's no write-ups about how Nancy Pelosi is losing it and has no idea what her party's about anymore. She mocks the progressives and the media is like, yes, that's great. I hate them too. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.